Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Light Up Your Metabolism podcast. I'm Danny, I'm your host, and I am so excited for today's very special episode with Greg the Hydrogen Man. I saw him on the Quantum Conversations podcast with my friends Carrie Bennett and Sarah Kleiner, and I was like, Sarah, can you please put me in touch with Greg? I cannot believe the stories that he was sharing and the real life testimonials from this element, hydrogen. I'm like, okay, what do I know about hydrogen? It is the first element on the periodic table, and that's probably about it. So hydrogen gas is now being used in these amazing ways to create just uncomprehendable healing in so many people. And when I recorded this interview with Greg, I don't think I had my hydrogen machine yet. I had to save up for it because it was an expense, and I did, and I've been using it. And I will say that I have significantly reduced bloating. I feel like I have more energy, and it feels very calming for me to use the hydrogen. It really calms my brain. And when I look at my stress scores, my daily stress scores on my Oura ring, which is a sleep tracker ring, I notice that the days that I'm consuming more hydrogen in the form of water and breathing it in through my nose, my stress scores are like really good. I spend all this time in this restorative state. So I feel that there's more for me on the horizon with hydrogen. I feel that there are definitely more benefits that will be coming, and I will share those with you. But I do know that for someone like me who is generally very healthy, that it's more of a longer term thing. But a lot of people who are in more dire situations actually start to feel improvements really, really quickly. So let me read you Greg's bio and share a little bit more about him and why I so badly wanted to have him on the show with you today. So Greg the Hydrogen Man is a molecular hydrogen therapy specialist, researcher, and host of the popular YouTube channel Uprising144K Hydrogen Man, struggling to find answers for compromised immune system, tumors, autoimmune issues, gut health issues, arthritis, and wheelchair-bound immobility, and a very serious heart condition. He began his own journey to heal himself and discovered hydrogen along the way. Studying the complex compound for 4 years, he implemented it into his health regimen and reversed all of his health challenges. Greg discusses the endless health benefits of hydrogen, how it helps protect against EMF radiation, topical application for skin problems. He talks about eye issues, like literally every issue you could think of we basically cover in this podcast, and different marketing tricks to watch out for when shopping for hydrogen devices. And this was really interesting to me because I've used hydrogen tablets, I've seen these hydrogen water bottle things. So really listen to this episode to hear what he has to say about these and why. And some other things about Greg: he also overcame extreme depression, including suicidal thoughts. He transformed his own health, including almost total immobility, went from a wheelchair to moving, thriving, and sharing. And he feels strongly about spirituality and its role in healing. And he has become this recognized hydrogen researcher and expert, and has helped family and friends. He helped to reverse their high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, arthritis, glaucoma, dementia, Alzheimer's, rare autoimmune issues, macular degeneration, IBS, Crohn's, celiac, infections, TBI, endometriosis, lack of energy, with using his unique hydrogen therapy protocols. And as Greg will share, he is not, making any claims about anything reversing or curing any disease. These are just anecdotal things that he has seen in the people that he has worked with. And I have seen a lot of testimonials from the website of the company that we're going to share, from Holy Hydrogen, and I do have a link for you and discount code in the description. And they do offer payment plans, but again, this is just listen with an open mind, and I think you'll be absolutely blown away by these benefits. And I'm so thankful that Greg decided to come on the show and share his story with all of us. So let's dive into the interview. All right, we have Greg the Hydrogen Man here. I'm so excited to welcome you onto the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm actually excited too. Blood sugar levels are, in my opinion, something really important to look at.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so excited for today's episode. As I mentioned before we started hit record, I had heard you on the Quantum Conversations podcast with my friends Carrie Bennett and Sarah Kleiner, and I was just so blown away by the information that you shared. And I know that we have a little disclaimer that we want to sort of put out there before we dive into this. So I'll
Oh,
let you
yes.
take it away. Yeah.
I'll just say that I'm not going to give any medical advice. I'm not going to make any medical claims. And everything I'm going to say today is basically just the opinion of the speaker and should not be construed as claims for or against any product or products. So, all right, I'll just put that out
All
there
right.
and you're
Yeah.
good to go.
We'll put that legal stuff out there right away. And, as with anything on this podcast, I have, that little disclaimer on my intro as well, that this is not medical advice, that this is just information. And, so much of the information and the speakers that I bring on, what they're sharing just resonates so profoundly. Like, that when you hear certain pieces of information, it's just like, wow, it hits in a different way. And that's sort of how I felt when I was listening to you talk about this. So let's start with your journey and sort of how you found hydrogen, because I'm sure people are like, wait, isn't that an element from, science and that I learned about in middle school? So let's start there. Why hydrogen, and what is your journey with it?
Well, ultimately, I mean, hydrogen is just a gas. That's
Mm-hmm.
how simple it is to describe it, I've discovered, because for most people, they don't totally understand it. And when I say it's a gas, it's like oxygen. We're literally breathing in oxygen right now, and it's just a gas. And that's all the hydrogen is, though there are different types of hydrogen. I'm sure we'll get into that. And ultimately, this whole journey is so crazy because I did not expect my life to take this direction at all. But I was really sick, extremely ill, and I was just dealt, as you might say, just a bad hand. Some people just feel like, or maybe something happened to me in childhood, who knows. But the point is that I just got really, really sick, and it was so severe that it literally ruined my life. It's hard to talk about it sometimes because it can be emotional, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden I start crying, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's so
We
embarrassing.
don't have to go into
Uh,
the details, but yeah.
but it was a very painful journey, and the only thing I could think of, I'm always trying to think of the good things, and ultimately I was trying to think like, what good can come out of this? That's really what I was trying to find out. And I've learned so much, and really it was ironic that I worked in the medical field for like 2 decades. And it's weird because I never expected to be quote unquote a health guru or anybody who would have discovered the things I'm discovering. And lo and behold, that's what happened. And I became, quote unquote, quite a hydrogen expert. That's why everybody affectionately calls me the Hydrogen Man, because hydrogen is just all over the place. There's so much that it can do. It's literally unbelievable. I was a huge skeptic for a very long time. I'm data driven. So for anybody out there, it's funny that we read these disclaimers because I'm data driven. So even if I show data that backs up whatever it is that I'm saying, it doesn't seem to matter to YouTube and different places out there. They still will say it's not good information or misinformation, whatever. So it's just better to put out a disclaimer and I don't make any claim. Just people do your own research. You
Yeah.
know, you can research anything that I'm telling you, but it's taken me a very long time to figure all this out. And I'm able to simplify it and tell people in a very short period of time.
Yeah. So what brought you to finding hydrogen? You said you had a lot of health issues. You probably tried a lot of things. Let's pick up there.
Yeah, I tried so many things because the medical establishment didn't really have any answers for me. And unfortunately, what I discovered, and it took a lot of years to discover, is that I've really noticed that there's corruption all over this world. And that even goes into the health industry. I mean, I
Hmm.
hate to say that, but it's been so frustrating for me throughout the years, trying numerous different products, trying to see what really works, spending a massive amount of money, wasting time while you're suffering, all while losing everything, because you just can't. I mean, I couldn't work. I literally couldn't walk. That's how bad it was. In fact, it was worse than even quote unquote walking, because I remember one time I was sitting on the couch and I went to go grab a remote control because I was going to try to play a video game. My joints hurt so bad I couldn't do that. So I just went to grab a remote control for the television. And when I tried to turn it on, I had so much pain in my joints. I couldn't use a remote control. That's how pathetic I felt. And I used to be quite athletic. So
Yeah.
this was like, it just broke me. I've been shattered into a million pieces, and I needed to find my way back.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have this personality where when I really, really want something wholeheartedly from my heart, I go all in, and I tend to find things that other people don't find. I don't know why I'm like that. Maybe it's the way that I look at the world. I've always been very much a self-taught person and feel like I can learn anything if my whole heart's in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking at all the data, and I started trying different diets, different products, different supplements, different things. And at least in my opinion, I actually figured out that health is actually not the most complicated thing in the world, though I feel like it's extremely overcomplicated. And I can literally cite the data that really can simplify it, in my opinion, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how it all happened. And then I started creating protocols based on data. And when I read about hydrogen, I literally thought it was a scam. That was, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because I'm a huge skeptic. So I read the data and I'm like, this is way too good to be true. And what the heck is hydrogen, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what happened in my journey. And I read the data for almost 4 years. That's how long it took me before I became so desperate that I was like, okay, I'll do anything. But I knew that I couldn't go to the corner drugstore and find hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
There really were no YouTube channels talking about it back then. I mean, this was a long time ago. And it was very difficult even to quote unquote find equipment or try to build your own equipment. And I will say that most of the stuff out there in the hydrogen world, in my opinion, is just absolute trash.
Mm.
And I hate to say that, but you know, because I wish it was a better industry. And it's just that there's a lot of cheap products, not doing things properly, cutting corners, or just not having the appropriate technology to create something that would be deemed medical grade, in
Yeah.
my opinion. And so it was a long journey, and I ended up having to become a specialist in a lot of fields that I wasn't interested in, like even the science of metals, like metallurgy. It's like I had zero interest in that. But I had to learn all that because it had a lot to do with hydrogen production and the different standards and levels of metals, who even has a tech to be able to produce such a metal. It just goes on and on. It's been a very long journey, and that's why I became such an expert, because I had to dive into so many things to figure this out, and it took many years.
Yeah. So tell us more about hydrogen. Like what you were a skeptic at first, but then you really you started trying it yourself. And what is it about hydrogen that makes it so special?
Well, reading the data, I realized that after years of reading the data, I'm like, this stuff looks pretty legitimate. I mean, we're talking about universities in Japan doing like actual studies where, to the point where it ended up being medically approved. So, I mean, it really is the real deal. And it really is a lot like oxygen. So oxygen, we already know we use it therapeutically, medically. I mean, you go to a hospital, they have oxygen tanks. I will say, though, this is important to understand. The oxygen in a hospital is different than the oxygen in some welding center where they do welding. And one is what I would call medical grade. The other one is not medical grade. And I don't know, do you know what the differences are between those two types of oxygen? Because they're both
I didn't
oxygen.
even know that there was an oxygen. I don't even know the second one.
Oh, you didn't know that they use oxygen for welding?
No, I had no idea.
Oh, okay. So basically, it comes down to purity. So
Okay.
the oxygen in a hospital is of high purity. Obviously, whenever you inhale a gas, I mean, this is a pretty big deal. Inhaling gases is right up there with how clean your water technically should be, or the water you're drinking. I mean, a lot of people don't realize you can die from just drinking bad water. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
dangerous water can be. But if it's really clean water, it can be absolutely amazing for the body. And the same thing goes for gases. I personally think the gases are even more dangerous than even the liquids. I mean, you can inhale a
Because it
gas.
can cross the blood-brain barrier. Is that one of the reasons why?
Well, yes, I mean, when you inhale a gas, it goes straight to the brain, you know, and it just can be very, very dangerous.
Right.
And so the purity is of the utmost importance. And so oxygen is something that we can use therapeutically. Be very cautious how you use it, though. There's a lot of things we can do wrong with oxygen. You should never use it regularly if you can avoid it.
Okay.
It causes a lot of problems. And then you got hydrogen, which works totally different. See, oxygen is oxidizing. Hydrogen has been discovered to function as a very unique antioxidant, you know, which is, again, really, really important. And so they're really unique, but the way that it works, I mean, it's been so dramatic what I've seen. Like, I'll just give you examples of things that I personally have seen. I've seen people's arthritis go away, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. I've seen some amazing things for type 1 diabetes. I've seen glaucoma literally disappear. My father was the first person I'd ever seen that happen to. He had glaucoma for like 30 years. It's crazy.
Wow.
His doctors wouldn't believe the results he was getting when they would test him for it. That's how crazy it was. Let's see, what did I say? People with arthritis, people with macular degeneration, that's supposed to be quote unquote incurable. People with some cataract issues, people who get dizzy on or get sick on boats, which is really weird. Why hydrogen would help them stop getting dizzy is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, people with Crohn's disease, celiac disease, a lot of gut issues. Hydrogen has been shown in a lot of studies to be absolutely incredible for gut issues, which is so important because roughly almost 80% of our immune system's in our gut. And even also like we're discovering how the gut is related to certain chemicals that we make in our brain for like sadness, like depression.
Yeah.
So I believe hydrogen is going to be a huge thing in regards to depression and things of this nature.
Yeah.
Not to mention
mental
the
health
anti-aging.
stuff.
Yes, mental health stuff, exactly. Not to mention things like, dementia, Alzheimer's, opening up what's called ghost vessels, absorbing nutrients even better. I get blood work regularly to make sure that my nutrients are where they're supposed to be, because one of the other protocols I created is overcoming any nutritional deficiency, because the science shows that when we have a deficiency, it pretty much leads to a disease. So like if I give you one example of many would be like vitamin C. If you're deficient in vitamin C, it leads to scurvy. We know that. What's the fix for scurvy? Vitamin C. Just get your levels back up. And so I really focused on that. And the most recent blood work I got, it was funny because doctors almost never call you when there's no problem. In the medical field, we only call patients when there's a problem typically.
Yeah.
And I got this phone call from this doctor. It was so shocking because I thought something was wrong. I was actually scared. I'm like, oh my God, what showed up on my blood work? And they said, well, no, nothing's wrong. Don't worry. She said, I'm just calling because I've been doing this for, I believe she said like 3 decades. And she said, I've never in my life seen blood work like yours. And she said, I had to call you. And I was like, whoa, okay, what did you notice? She goes, you don't have deficiencies. It's like everybody's typically deficient in something. So that was pretty wild. And of course, I don't like to talk too much about diet because everybody argues about diet. But I'll just say that she was shocked at what I ate considering my nutrient level. She's like, it makes no sense to her. She couldn't believe it and was extremely shocked. And then she wanted to know what I was doing because she wanted to use it for her own family, her own daughter, herself, and her patients, which is unusual. Most doctors don't really want to know your opinions.
They usually just say, keep doing what you're doing, and they don't ask questions to further help other patients. But I get that. So it has been hydrogen therapy, and we'll talk about like how this is taken into the body. You mentioned a gas, but we'll talk about that in a second. But so hydrogen therapy, you're saying that you have seen significant health improvements with tons of people using different protocols. And this has been helpful for things like metabolic issues like diabetes and mental health disorders, gut disorders. So anything else that we sort of missed from that? Yeah.
No, you got it right. Just more stuff that I guess didn't totally get to mention. But
sure.
I mean, all I'll say is that I've seen a lot of conditions. I myself, I had so many health problems, but one of the real severe ones that I wasn't even focused on was my heart. I had a really bad heart issue. And I was told that I most likely needed open heart surgery. And I'd had this issue for a long time. And I went to a cardiologist and they checked everything. And basically the cardiologist said, look, you'd be lucky to have another 10 years. And he goes, just to let you know, he goes, we need to do something about this. And I was in the process of learning about hydrogen, but I've always been playing with different protocols.
Yeah.
And I created a protocol that I think is one of the best ones there is. In fact, my protocol was studied. They did 2 studies on my protocol, and it was shown to work better than any protocol ever studied. So my protocol was the #1 protocol so far.
Amazing.
And so doing that, my heart condition literally went away. I went to one of my last heart appointments to schedule that surgery, and it just mysteriously disappeared. And I had this issue for decades.
Wow.
And they just couldn't believe it. The doctor was like, how did this happen? Told him about hydrogen. He didn't really want to know too much. We talked about it for maybe 3 minutes, and that was it. And just like, hey, you're fine. You can go away now. For heart disease, I've seen some pretty remarkable things. There's about almost 200 medical conditions that hydrogen has been shown in studies to appear to be effective for. So there's quite a few things, and I can explain why if you want. Or
I just had a couple more quick questions. What about things like weight loss, things like liver health? Any benefits that you've seen there?
Oh, absolutely. So for liver health, there's actually a lot of science in regards to how hydrogen affects the liver. There's literally been people with cirrhosis of the liver who reverse their cirrhosis of their liver. In studies, I actually discovered, nobody talks about this, about the effects. So I'm really big on parasites, meaning getting them out of the body or lowering the amount of parasites in the body, because they rob us of nutrients.
Yes.
So if you already have issues absorbing nutrients, and then you got these things in you eating your nutrients before you do, and I just don't like them in my body, because as I've cleaned them out, my mind feels much more clear and definitely more happiness and just less foggy. And so I really like keeping the parasite numbers down. And I found this study where it was on the liver. Hydrogen has been shown to be amazing for the liver. I've witnessed liver conditions be better. But in the study also one of the ones that I found, the parasite numbers in the liver went down quite a bit using hydrogen. And so I don't think that it kills parasites. I think what it's really doing is it creates an environment that the parasites don't like to be in or don't live very well in, and so they leave. So that was very positive in regards to the liver. And then the other question was as far as your metabolism.
Yeah.
So there's been some positive things. It appears that it'll help you hormonally, even for like testosterone, which is a really important to have your hormones all calibrated and everything working right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about metabolism is I've seen a lot of people use hydrogen and literally just get leaner and lose weight. There's a woman that I actually did a video about, and I think she was like nudging 400 pounds or something like that. She's in a wheelchair and whatnot.
Yeah.
And she had so many medications, high blood pressure, statins, heart issues, all these things. She got on the hydrogen and her results were pretty dramatic too. I believe she's lost up to like 40 or 50 pounds at this point without changing anything.
Just with the hydrogen. Yeah, that's great.
Just with the hydrogen. She admits that she just likes drinking soda and eating out of the microwave and doesn't take super good care of herself, but she was willing to do the hydrogen. Her blood pressure kept coming down. They got her off of a lot of pharmaceuticals. They lowered a lot of the other pharmaceuticals as far as the dosing. And what I've noticed is that it just really helps establish your metabolism again. Though I'm a big proponent of clean water too, because we use water as a carrier for the hydrogen gas. So you dissolve it into water. Plus you can just inhale the pure gas, like I got it right here, the cannula.
Yeah.
And so there's different ways to do it, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. No, that's great. So yeah, let's talk about how a tiny a gas can be so impactful for human health and so effective, driving all these people to see these incredible changes in their health and sort of healing that they're experiencing. So how is hydrogen so helpful?
So the first thing I'll say is that I really think that the future of medicine is actually utilizing gases, and hydrogen is obviously at the forefront, and oxygen in different ways, even things like ozone. But the way hydrogen appears to be working is, first of all, it's the size of it. It's so tiny. Now, people don't understand that it appears to function as what we call a selective antioxidant. Now, what people don't understand is that antioxidants actually have different sizes. Are you aware of this?
Only because I heard you say it on another podcast, and I was hoping you would say it on this one because it's such a cool piece of information to know.
It's so important. In fact, I could probably pull up some images while we're chatting. But basically, antioxidants come in different sizes. So if you were to look at the molecules of like vitamin E, CoQ10, glutathione, vitamin C, they're all different sizes. And a lot of people may not understand, like, why does different sizes matter? Okay, well, think about a house that, let's say, needs work. Let's say it's rotting inside, there's dry rot, whatever. You need somebody to come in and do a remodel. Well, let's say that the workers are the size of elephants and they can't even get through the door. Yeah. That's too big of antioxidants. Hydrogen is like so tiny compared to any antioxidant out there that there is no place in the human body that it cannot reach. It literally reaches everywhere. I mean, this stuff goes right through anything. It'll go right through glass. It'll go right through plastic. It'll go right through walls. It'll go right through any tissue in your body. And because it's so tiny, the mitochondria are really at the core also of how our body functions. Yeah. And so it'll go right in there. And we have so much oxidation, like oxidative stress, according to Japanese scientists who are researching hydrogen. Basically, there was a massive list. I don't know if I should tell the whole story, but it was a massive list of medical problems. This is how they discovered it. Huge list. And then next to every single medical problem, they would put the pharmaceutical drug that is typically prescribed for that medical problem. And then next to that, some other drug for side effects or another drug that is needed. And the list of drugs was massive. I wish I had the piece of paper for you. It was massive. And then they showed hydrogen, and they said, we've shown in all these studies that it's effective for all these medical conditions. And they said, how is that possible? Because in our brain, it doesn't compute. How can this one thing do all this? It doesn't make sense. After millions of dollars and a lot of hours of research, they basically came down to the conclusion that it appears that 97 and 98% of all disease comes down to one thing, and that's oxidative stress. And so if you have too much oxidative stress in the liver problems, you have too much oxidative stress in the kidneys, whatever organ you want to, deem too much oxidative stress, ROS, reactive oxygen species, it's a type of oxygen in some strange way, right? And so the hydrogen goes in, and hydrogen has an affinity for oxygen, hence water, H2O. H2 is molecular hydrogen. That's what we're speaking of, not to be confused with other forms. A lot of people, I hate to say this, but they sell products that are not actually molecular hydrogen.
Okay.
They try to trick people. I've had too many people email me saying, I thought I was taking the right stuff. I didn't realize it's the wrong stuff.
Okay.
And ultimately, it seems to neutralize this oxidative stress. Mm-hmm. And that's how it really appears to function, is liberating the body of these free radicals, right? And helping the body go back into homeostasis. Mm-hmm. And so that's one really important thing. Of course, I add things to my protocol like proper hydration, because hydration, the body just doesn't work right without being properly hydrated. Yeah. Of course, I'm really big on the cleanest water in the world. Why? I don't know if I have it here or not. Maybe I don't. Oh yeah, I do have it. Because of lab reports. So I'm a big data-driven guy. So I don't just make this stuff up. Everything always pretty much has to be data-driven or make logical sense. And I can show you, this is a lot of lab tests, all mm-hmm. these chemicals in our water, and pages of them. I mean, pages. You'd be surprised at what's in our water, from pesticides to pharmaceuticals to even radioactive contaminants. That one really shocked me, to bacteria and viruses and parasites. I mean, the whole thing is shocking. And your average water filter will not filter this stuff out. I became kind of a water expert. I know every water filtration modality in existence and which ones actually work. We can talk about that later if you want.
Sure.
So ultimately, that seems to be partially how it works. But it's so complex that the truth is that even scientists still don't know exactly why it's doing what it's doing, because it is a selective antioxidant, and it'll do things for one person and it'll do something different for another person. But it's always trying to bring the body back into balance. And in my opinion, is just a beautiful, beautiful molecule. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I see why. So it feels like to me, it has to come down to, we need a little bit of knowledge of some basic science. And I just know the basics because I'm not a scientist myself, but the idea that our body makes, in the mitochondria, there's the electron transport chain, and we need hydrogen to go through that electron transport chain, and that is what makes ATP and water in our body. And that's where there's also a lot of reactive oxygen species being made, is in the mitochondria. So it makes sense that if an antioxidant can't fit in the mitochondria, it's not getting to the site of where this sort of I think about it like exhaust from a car, where all this exhaust is. So the hydrogen can go right in there, no problem. And it's also a particle and a wave, because now we're having to talk about quantum physics, because it's, we're talking about one proton and one electron, and I mean, it's H2, so it's two of those, but it's once you understand a little, even just a little bit of how our body, the main thing that it uses to make energy is electrons. And so we're getting that from the hydrogen, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just starting to scratch the surface of this understanding. But the electron is probably going to go through the electron transport chain, and then the hydrogens are going to attach to the oxygen that we are breathing in to neutralize it, basically by creating water. So it's the positive protons are connecting with the negative oxygen, and that is what makes cellular water, which is then charged because it's the fourth phase of water, this exclusion zone water, Gerald Pollack's work. But all that to say is that it's this is the simplest, not simplest, but this is the most foundational way, to the root of everything. People talk about root cause, the root cause. this is so, so, so small. This is the root cause of the root cause of the root cause of the root cause, you know? And so that's where it's so powerful, because it is happening at the smallest level in every single cell. And so if you help one cell to be a better cell, then it's going to do whatever it does best. So if it's a liver cell, it's going to be the best liver cell you can get. If it's a brain cell, it's going to upgrade the brain. So it doesn't matter where in the body it is. It's just helping every cell to optimize its function. And then that's where the healing comes in, because your body knows how to heal itself. We're not creating healing. The body is self-healing. If I cut my hand, it would start healing right away, right? Like, I don't need to be like, hey, you need to, like, I don't need to tell it what to do. So we live in self-healing bodies. And so if we can give the body, every cell, every mitochondria in every cell, what it needs, and take care of all the fumes that it's creating, like this like garbage disposal system almost. It's like we need to get rid of this reactive oxygen species, all this oxidation, because that's what's slowing everything down. That's why aging, quote unquote, is so detrimental to our health, because we can't keep up with these loads. Is that some of what I'm saying? Is it landing?
And I think that there's even ways to even simplify it further.
Okay, let's do it.
So what I think hydrogen really, really comes down to is, I literally think, and I do think it's very spiritual actually, because it's the ascension molecule. And when I say ascension molecule, people may be like, oh, okay, because we hear of like people like Jesus ascending and, you know, these holy people ascending. What does hydrogen do? It ascends. It literally, I mean, like a balloon. It just goes up. It literally ascends. It defies gravity. Where if you take an oxygen molecule, do you know what it does? It doesn't go to the heavens. It drops to the ground like a dead person. Wow. And oxygen is oxidizing. Oxygen is technically death, by the way. It doesn't mean that it's bad for us, but life is all about balance. It's all about balance of life and death. But hydrogen to me is not only the ascension molecule, it is the life molecule. And I'll prove it to you right now. It's really simple.
Okay.
So in ancient scriptures, and I study ancient scripture, I study everywhere to create my protocol. So I look at the science, I look at ancient knowledge, I look at all of it.
I love
it
that.
It has to line up perfect.
Right. It has to match in all the things, and then it feels like a universal truth.
Exactly, yes. And that's the way that I do.
I love that.
So in the ancient scriptures, it literally says life is in the blood. Okay. Now this is how easy it is. If I put a rubber band around my arm and I cut off blood supply to my arm, it's going to die. Okay. It's going to turn purple and it's going to die. Life is in the blood. Why exactly is life in the blood? I believe the blood carries nutrients, but it carries gases. This is why we measure our oxygen saturation level in our blood. Okay. Yeah. So we actually are carrying gases through our blood. That's how we saturate hydrogen into water. And that's, I mean, it's like the same concept.
Or like carbon dioxide in like seltzer water. That's like what CO2. I'm thinking. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
CO2 in soda pop. And so here's the craziest part. So hydrogen is actually medically approved in Japan for strokes. Okay. So let's say you have a stroke and you're not getting proper blood supply to a part of the brain. Well, what happens to that part of the brain? Within so many minutes, it will literally start to die. Okay. And this is when half of the body doesn't work because somebody had a stroke and you don't have blood supply. Well, in certain ambulances in Japan, they'll have hydrogen tanks. They get somebody who has a stroke or a heart attack, by the way, and they will put on the hydrogen, you know, kind of like a cannula, like one of these, and it'll start flowing straight to the brain because you're inhaling it. It will literally go to that part of the brain where there's no blood, and it will keep that part alive. Now, this is nuts. It will keep it alive with no blood. I mean, if people can even wrap their minds around what this means, to me it means it's the life molecule. It is literally the ascension molecule, the life, you know, like when Jesus would say, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. You know, like all these things. He would also mention things about living water and all these spiritual, you know, connotations. And I think hydrogen is it's even the light of the world. I mean, look at the sun. Look at the stars. What do you think they're made of? They're made of hydrogen.
Hydrogen crashing into each other, you know, like nuclear fusion. And so we're getting photons from that. We're getting the energy from hydrogen. That makes
we're
so cool.
We're literally figured out a way to bring light into the body. Okay.
Yes, I have chills.
As you bring this light into the body, what do you think the light and the life is going to do but bring life and potential healing? I mean, we're not making claims, but you know, what do you think's going to happen? I have videos on my YouTube channel, like everything's for free. That's part of my mission is like everything's free. And you go to my videos and you look at video number 8's pretty cool. One of the things that intrigued me a lot about hydrogen is how much it protects our bodies, which is totally nuts. I could give you numerous examples, but like, I mean, if people are exposed to radiation, if people are exposed to quote unquote chemotherapy, things
What about
like this.
mold?
Mold exposure, there's a study on it. It appears to really help with that too, as far as protection. There was a study on a drug called cisplatin. Cisplatin is an anti-tumor drug that is really nasty. In fact, it's so nasty that even doctors rarely want to use it because it literally destroys your kidneys. And you'll need a kidney transplant on top of the cancer that you're already dealing with. And on this one study, they showed that hydrogen protected the kidneys so much that you could take that drug and still potentially keep your original kidneys, which just shows you the power of how protective this stuff is. So in this day and age where we're bombarded by EMF, chemicals in food and water and air, I mean, it's everywhere. I'm like, I need protection. I need like real protection, something that is scientifically backed. And then we were just talking about the blood and life being in the blood. The movement of blood is super important. Hence the reason when you do exercise, you're breathing and your blood is pumping. Well, if you watch my video number 68, I remember there was a doctor who literally just couldn't believe what I was showing. It's laboratory footage of a live blood analysis sample of somebody's blood when they used when they had no water, and then they drank just really good, healthy, clean spring water, and then they had hydrogen water, specifically from the machine that I use, the equipment, and I only use the best when it comes to hydrogen and water filtration in my home.
We'll talk about that.
It was called the Lourdes HydroFix Premium. If people want to look at it, the site is called holyhydrogen.com. But anyway, so that's the equipment they use for the study. And when you see what the blood does, this doctor contacted me and said, you know, that's impossible. It's just not possible what you're showing there. And I don't like people showing bad information. And she said, I am willing to repeat that study. I will get the same machine that they use. I'm going to go to my lab. I'm going to do the same lab. I'm going to do everything the same. And I think that you've been duped. That's what she told me. She goes, I think you've been duped. And I said, you know, the Japanese, I mean, this is footage from a lab. I doubt that they're, you know, lying to people. Japanese are pretty straight up honest people. One of the most probably least amount of crime in the world. They're very good people. But I was always open to it. So she did it. And to make a long story short, the results, when she called me, she goes, I can't believe it. The results came back the same. And she said, this stuff is real. And she said, I just can't believe it. She immediately started giving it to her 90-something-year-old mother who could barely walk for maybe 2 minutes. She would get exhausted. And after a few months of using the hydrogen, her mother was able to walk for hours. 96 years old, I believe this woman was, who was typically bedridden most of you know, the hours of the day. So it is just an unbelievable molecule. And by the way, reverting back to something you said earlier, you know, our bodies do make hydrogen. So we do make hydrogen. Our bodies need it. We can't function without the hydrogen. And the problem is that it appears either as we age, we make less and less of it, but also kind of like hormones, but you also have to understand that this day and age, with the state of our gut, so many people have gut issues, it's unbelievable. And hydrogen appears to be really good for the gut. It appears to function as an anti-inflammatory on top of it all. And really, really being so good for the gut so that your body can, you know, come back to homeostasis. So I think that a lot of people who are not even that old are not even producing enough hydrogen in their body. And this even goes to, not only do I like to look at ancient scripture, but I also like to observe how Mother Nature does things. So I observe Mother Nature a lot, even on how it purifies water, which is very interesting. But one of the things that Mother Nature also does is, have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France? So Lourdes, France is like, they have holy water there. People literally travel from all around the world to drink that water because so many people have claimed that it made their medical conditions go away. And nobody knew what made that water so special. They literally sent scientists because they had so many documented cases, I mean, piles of documents where it was beyond a shadow of a doubt that it appeared that this stuff was doing something. And the scientists studied the water and everybody came back and said, it's just H2O, nothing magical, can't figure out what's going on with this water. And it was the Japanese, because think about it, if you take a sample of that water and send it to a lab, by the time it gets to the lab, there's no hydrogen gas left in it. The stuff escapes so quickly. Somehow the Japanese figured out that they could test it earlier, and they discovered that that water had high levels of molecular hydrogen, this specific gas. dissolved into the water. And that's how they started doing the research. And it really led down this crazy rabbit hole. And now we're talking about it today, but it is so magical.
And that's where that machine name comes from. Okay. Got it.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah. So before we talk about the machine that you use and recommend, and then also maybe some products you don't recommend that I have heard you talk about on other podcasts, I would love to kind of jump into the blood sugar conversation. So you mentioned something about that earlier. So I don't even necessarily have a question for you, but you said that you knew some good information about regulating blood sugar and from the Japanese, I believe.
Yes, and I've seen it myself. So basically what I've seen is hydrogen does so much. It's almost like a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. I've seen it basically act like insulin. So if you use a certain amount of hydrogen, because quote unquote you're going to want a certain amount of milligrams of hydrogen.
Okay.
And when you use a certain amount of hydrogen, it appears to help regulate blood glucose. Now, if you were to take too much of it, it's not like taking insulin, because
where you would go low.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what's so beautiful. It literally is self-regulating. For people who are worried about taking too much, you're literally exhaling it. So if you get too much of the gas, you're just off-gassing it every time you exhale, and your body will just off-gas any hydrogen that you don't really technically need, as far as what your body is wanting. And so I've seen it regulate blood glucose a lot. There was a woman, this is one of the craziest stories. I can't remember which video it is because all my videos are numbered. I have so many. I have over like 400 videos.
Okay.
But one of them was a woman with type 1 diabetes. And she heard about hydrogen. She tried like hydrogen pills. They didn't do anything for her. And she's always checking her blood glucose. She tried some cheap products like these, which I don't recommend at all. But people always wanted to find something cheap, like these little hydrogen bottles. I'm just going to say it right now because I get too many emails about this every day. I don't recommend any hydrogen bottles like this. There is none on the market, in my opinion, that are any good at this time.
Okay.
Because, I mean, these are pretty much mostly made in China. They use plated metals. I've seen the lab reports on the membranes and what's in them. I'm not a fan at all. In fact, I'm scared of what's in them. I wouldn't even use it if somebody paid me to. I don't even want to use them.
Okay.
Hydrogen needs to be done correctly. And this woman almost gave up. And then she saw what I was recommending, and she said, this is my last chance to try something. And she tried it. She followed some protocols. She was able to go without using insulin for almost 6 months. Now, for a type 1 diabetic...
A type 1?
This is supposed to be impossible.
Wow. That's
and so her doctor,
powerful.
And I did a whole video. I showed all her medical records, all her readings, and her doctor saw this and said, look, this is not possible. This is what I want to do. He wanted her to write down everything she ate, take pictures of all her glucometer reading, like everything, document everything. And he monitored her for almost 6 months. This is how I know that this happened. And of course, she contacted me and everything because I helped her with protocols. And she went all gung-ho on the hydrogen. And she was able to go without the insulin for a very long time, which is just insane. And when she showed her to her doctor, he's just like, I can't believe it because this should be impossible. But what are you doing and how did you learn how to do it? And she's like, well, there's this guy on YouTube. And immediately he's like, what? There's no guy on YouTube showing anything like this. She's like, this is not possible. There's just no way because this is, and this is his words apparently, this would be worthy of a Nobel Prize. And he goes, this is so big that there's just no way that some guy is saying this on YouTube. And but he witnessed it and he saw it. And I mean, she had to be pretty extreme with it. You know, most people wouldn't want to be that extreme. But the other thing that I've shown to do is it helps people minimize a lot of the medications that they're on, not building the resistance to insulin, for example, things of that nature. And with type 2 diabetes, I mean, I've just seen it go away. I mean, that's what I've seen a lot of. I mean, you can do that a lot with diet and different things. Personally, I like to combine things. So I like to combine super clean water, best hydrogen protocol, best hydrogen on the planet. Of course, water up with hydrogen gas inhalation, and then, of course, diet. And some exercise.
And lifestyle. And
lifestyle, yeah. So that's pretty much the way that I like to go at it.
That's awesome. So I have 2 clients who are coming to mind, and just I would just love to just run it by you. So I have one client who had a head injury. She fell, and then she is getting spikes of her blood pressure in the afternoon. So just all of a sudden her blood pressure will go up and up and up, and it's not because of her blood sugar. So she's wearing a continuous glucose monitor. She's doing great with her blood sugars, and this has actually gotten better. There were a couple of days where she didn't have it. You know, we're doing a lot of things to help reduce brain inflammation and things like that. So I was just wondering, because I know that some of the studies will say that it's helpful for lowering blood pressure, but she'll have sort of unstable blood pressure where it'll go high and then low. So do you think, I know that you can't fully recommend it, but I know it's not medical advice, but what are your sort of initial thoughts on someone who's experiencing some blood pressure instabilities?
So in my opinion, I think that maybe there is a way to resolve this. I can tell you one very quick story. There was a woman who had a really bad head injury also and had TBI, so traumatic brain injury. I think hydrogen is going to change the world when it comes to TBI. This woman, and so sweet, God bless her soul, and you can actually see her. She did a testimonial for the company. They had her on camera. She told her whole story.
Yeah.
If people want to check out the company's YouTube channel, it's called Holy Hydrogen. So check that out because this was so amazing. She contacted me and she could barely talk. So she would talk and literally forget. She'd stumble on her words. She kind of sounded like somebody called Let's Go Brandon. I don't know if I should say that or not, but anyway, or Biden, whatever. But she was stumbling upon her words and would forget things literally every 8, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. It was very, very difficult to work with her, but I got her on a really good hydrogen protocol. And the reason that it was so touching is because 6 months later, she calls me, and I talk to a lot of people, and I'm better with seeing people rather than just a name and a voice over the phone. But she called me and she said, hey, Hydrogen Man, I just calling real quick. I just want to tell you, thank you. You saved my life. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I was like, who is this?
Yeah.
Like, who's calling? And she said, you really don't remember me, huh? You don't recognize my voice. And I said, look, I talked to a lot of people. No, I don't mean any disrespect. She goes, I'm the lady from Hawaii. And immediately I remembered who she was. And I was like, oh my God, you know why I didn't recognize her? Because she was talking normal and she could remember everything that I was talking to her about. And she said, and I was like thinking to myself, I told her, I said, this is great, but I don't know how I saved your life. It's not like I jumped into a river and you were drowning or something. She said, well, what you don't know is that I was actually going to take my own life. She said, I was going to end my life because I was so broken and had been suffering from this TBI for so long. And she said, I literally prayed, and within 24 hours, your video had popped up. And to me, I just felt it. I thought it was an answer to my prayers. That's why I reached out to you. You reached back. And she said, this stuff has completely saved my life, changed my life. I can function again. And it was so amazing. So they did a testimonial. You can actually see her share her whole story. And it's so touching.
Yeah.
And to me in life, the most important thing, to me, really the most important thing is helping others and touching other people's lives. That's all that really matters. Fancy cars, fancy clothes, fancy houses. It's nice to have nice things, but it's not at the top of my list at all. I got to feed my soul, and I feel like this is how I feed it,
I love that, so, Greg. I was a speech pathologist before I did what I'm doing now. So all this stuff about TBI, her not being able to speak, and strokes and all of that. That piece. Yeah, that piece really is so touching because, one of the reasons why I left the field was because I saw more improvement with the nutrition protocols I was giving I worked with both kids and adults, and the nutrition protocols I was giving to the kids would help their speech much more in a much greater degree than anything I could do with them with speech and language therapy. And this was not every single person, because sometimes, if you can't pronounce the letter S, like you can pronounce an S sound, hydrogen or diet is not going to help with that. So I understand, like, there's certain things, there's still a need, obviously, for the field. But what I'm saying is that there's just sometimes there's other modalities that can work even more powerfully. And I just so resonate with that, like wanting to help people. So yeah,
because
love
it's
that.
so frustrating. It's frustrating to be in a field and then that you're not really helping. All you see is sick people all the time. When I worked in the medical field, it was like that too. You see sick people all the time. You don't really see them getting the help that they deserve. And, you have to go outside the box because they're highly regulated. And we know the whole agenda over there pretty much. But to try to go back to your question, now, actually, I probably went off
That's okay.
The path here. What was your original question?
I don't remember, so it's okay. We could. Here we go.
I remember. It had to do with the blood pressure.
Oh, the blood pressure. Yes.
Okay. So, in my opinion, what would probably really, really help with something like that would be hydrogen water, because hydration really helps balance out blood glucose. Actually, also, Just like fiber also actually helps a lot with that. And also not just normal hydration, but now we're talking hydrogen with the hydration. And by
Is
the way,
that why
hydrogen
it's called hydration? Like HYD? Because
yeah, hydrogen appears to hydrate even better. There was a study done on athletes in Japan, and it improved performance, it improved their stamina and things of this nature. Do I think it would make a difference on this irregulated blood pressure that could be like a faulty signal or something from a brain injury?
That's what I think.
I really do think that it would. And on top of it all, yes, neutralizing the free radicals, bringing everything back into balance, but also opening up like ghost vessels. So you know about the ghost vessels?
No.
Which a lot of people don't know this, and it's a weird medical term, but basically as we age, or even if you maybe have something traumatic, there are places in your body where you used to get blood. Now remember, we want blood getting to certain places because it's carrying oxygen, it's carrying hydrogen, it's carrying minerals, it's carrying nutrients, hopefully, if you have the proper level of nutrients in your blood. And hydrogen appears to open up these ghost vessels again where there's no blood and start bringing in blood again. Now, this is bonkers. Like, this was discovered by the #1 university in the world that researches hydrogen, which is Keio University in Japan. And so opening up these vessels again, which is like also really good for the skin, like people, you know, who like anti-aging and stuff, and you're not getting proper hydration and you get more wrinkly. Bring in all this blood. This is why, have you ever seen little babies are really plump and soft and hydrated?
Yeah.
And as you get older, you're actually much more dehydrated, and it's very easy for them to have a heat stroke or things of this nature. So in my opinion, I think a proper hydrogen protocol would be immensely helpful for her, actually.
Yeah. And I think that it sounds like hydrogen acts kind of like what I know in like, to sort of ground it in the world that I know, like adaptogenic herbs, which traditionally are used to support the adrenal glands. So if you're low, like if your adrenal glands are sluggish, it will help bump them up. Whereas if they're hyper functioning, it will help bring them back down. So it sounds like hydrogen, it's a balancer where it's not like, oh, it lowers blood pressure, so it's going to lower it too much. It just sounds like it regulates things. So maybe that term of like regulating, balancing is sort of what it does. Is that, would you say that's accurate?
I think it's relatively accurate and more.
Okay.
You know, like this might be important. Some people might say, well, is it dangerous for some people to take hydrogen? You know, this is an important one because I've seen this with diabetes, by the way. The biggest things that I've ever seen are with diabetes and high blood pressure, maybe cholesterol issues. So this is what I've seen. For example, I always tell people, please monitor whether it's your blood glucose or your blood pressure if you're on medicine. Because what happens is, if you have high blood pressure, let's say your blood pressure is too high and you're here, and you're taking medicine to bring it about to normal levels. Well, now you start using hydrogen, and if hydrogen's fixing the underlying issue and enhancing how good your body is responding to this medicine, then your blood pressure ends up going too low.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen this too many times. People who have said, I never have had low blood pressure in my life, it ends up going too low and they're like dizzy, and I'm like, I told you, please monitor your blood pressure, you know. And
so work with prescribing physicians if you're on any medications, because it's very likely that you'll have to lower or come off of these medications. I tell people that before they join my coaching program as well, because, you know, when we work with metabolic health, they're getting off of all these medications, thyroid meds, blood pressure meds, blood sugar medications, mood medications. So it sounds like same thing here and more. So
extremely similar. And so and it's going to be the same way with blood sugar. You don't want it to go too low either. Again, life is about balance. So I always tell people to monitor thyroid also. I've seen people's thyroid start working better, and then they have to adjust the medicine. So they either adjust it or take you off of it, or slowly adjust it until you eventually get off of it, which in my opinion is the goal. I hate being on any pharmaceuticals. So
absolutely. So let's talk about the one and only hydrogen machine you recommend. And you mentioned it's the Lourdes, Lourdes, hydrogen machine from Holy Hydrogen. I will link that below in the show notes, of course. And what makes it so special, and why is it the only one that you particularly use?
So again, I'm a data guy. and looking at all the scientific data, it led me to this machine. Little did I know that it was the number one machine in all of Japan. For a reason. It is the best. There is a doctor. He is actually a neurosurgeon, neuroscientist, one of the just smartest doctors in Japan. He's actually a hydrogen specialist on top of it all. And he literally said, the only machine I will use is the Lourdes Hydrofix Premium. He literally uses it himself. And he said, it's the only machine that I recommend to my patients. He does not recommend the hydrogen pills out there. He does not recommend something they call Brown's gas. He doesn't recommend the little bottles like this. So there's a reason that he doesn't recommend it. If I were to tell you every little thing that makes a machine special, it might be a while, but I can tell you a few simple things.
Sure.
One is the metal. The science of metals is so complex. And this machine, when they wanted to create it, the story is actually fascinating. The guy who actually created it, this is when people do something from the heart instead of for the profit. He unfortunately had a daughter that was born with ALS. It's very sad. He was told that she'd be lucky to make it to the age of 5 years old, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, by the way, for people who don't know what ALS is. And he knew about the science of hydrogen, and he really thought, based on the data, that it would be of great benefit to her. And so he knew that there really wasn't equipment that was making really high quality, like medical grade hydrogen, something of extreme high purity, really, really clean, making both the water and the gas you can inhale, which is really important. That's how one of the protocols I created is by using both. And so he went out of his way to ask help. Now, I don't think this would have ever been possible in any other country, but the Japanese worked together. So he literally got help from Toyota, Yamaha, G-Shock, and some really, really amazing metal company. But when he did talk to the metal company, they told him that it was just impossible. They said what he was requesting, just the technology wasn't there and it just was impossible. And this was a long time ago. They ended up making a breakthrough and were able to produce the metal that he was wanting for the machine. And there's different ways of making hydrogen, by the way. He chose the most difficult, but only because it was the best. But the technology just wasn't there. Eventually it did achieve that. And so he was able to create this machine, just an absolute masterpiece, and affordable. My goodness. I mean, to make medical grade hydrogen, the kind of equipment, I mean, it probably would have been easily in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, the kind of stuff you would have needed to make super high purity medical grade gas. So it would have not been, attainable for the average person. And you certainly can't go to the store and just buy a tank of medical grade hydrogen gas. And so he ends up making this machine with all the help of all these industries. And then on top of it all, I found out that he could have done it in China to try to keep the price even lower, but he said no. He said, I will literally sacrifice profits. I will do whatever it is that I have to do, even if the machine has to be more expensive. It's all going to be done in Japan. We're going to do it. It's going to be handmade in Japan. It is actually every machine, by the way, nobody does this in the entire hydrogen industry. They're the reason that they're number one is every single machine gets lab tested and certified, which is just nuts. The cost of doing such things is just crazy. And then they would develop all these one-offs. So one-off technology that nobody would ever develop. Still to this day, nobody has what they're doing. And they're doing things that are just not even deemed possible. Like their newest machine, I saw some of the laboratory footage. Even they were shocked by what they have done. Because every little piece, it's kind of like developing a car, and every little thing, you just want to make it better and better and better. And all of a sudden the car is getting 100 miles per gallon. And you're like, whoa, we didn't expect that. It's so efficient. And so the machine is super efficient, makes super good nano bubbles. Their new machine makes what they are calling sticky hydrogen. So when they were measuring the hydrogen content, it's going beyond what supposedly science says is possible. And so I'm looking to get the laboratory footage on that because it's just nuts. Their purity is so high.
What is sticky hydrogen?
So basically, in our atmospheric pressure, you can only dissolve so much hydrogen gas. So you can only go to about 1.6 ppm parts per million of hydrogen. Now, a lot of people claim higher numbers than that. That's when you got to be cautious also. But in our atmospheric pressure, that's the max. And when they test it, and they use the proper equipment, everybody in America is using the wrong stuff to test hydrogen. It's kind of laughable, but nobody knows. But with the right equipment, it shouldn't really go past 1.6 because it shouldn't be possible. Well, they were measuring like 1.86, 1.9, and they're like, whoa, that's not possible. Like something must be wrong with the equipment. So they recalibrated, same results. They kept doing it, and they're like, what is this new machine that we've created? Like, what have we done here? And they figured out how to double structure hydrogen. Nobody's ever done that either. So they're literally double structuring it. And by doing this process, it induced a natural frequency within hydrogen. It literally looks like DNA. So I actually believe that it will literally restructure our DNA and do good things for us. But we'll wait on the science on that. And then the hydrogen is the nanobubbles is a huge part of it, meaning the tiniest of bubbles to the point where you can't even see a lot of them, and they're sticking everything. So they were sticking to all this equipment, which is why the readings were going higher than they should, which would be awesome because as you ingest it, you want it to stick to the organs and do its magic. So it's more like bioavailable to you, which is really, really important. And so on and on it goes. But yeah, it's not only is it a special machine, I'm just glad it exists.
Yeah.
So one of these days I want to meet that guy and shake his hand. And by the way, his daughter that was not supposed to make it to 5 is like 13 years old now. And the whole thing's just miraculous. And this little machine is going to just change the world in the world of hydrogen. It's just amazing.
Absolutely amazing. So I like that you told us, that there's basically the stuff out there is not good and it can be damaging to your health. So don't
be cautious. Please.
Yeah, be really cautious about that. So is there anything else that you feel excited to share with everyone about hydrogen? We talked about like you can drink it or inhale it. So how do you drink it? Like what is this process? I understand the inhaling of a gas through a nasal cannula. I've seen people with oxygen tanks, so I can just sort of picture that with hydrogen. But what is the drinking part? And do you like filter your own water? Sorry, I just don't understand how that part works. So
first, you can use any kind of water you technically want, but I like the cleanest water in the world because I'm picky about my water.
Okay.
If you want really clean water, the only way to do it is carbon distillation. It's the only way. No reverse osmosis, no carbon filter. Nothing will filter to the degree of carbon distillation. In fact, if anybody wants to know the products I use for this, it's a website called mypurewater.com. You're going to see a theme here. Everything's about purity. So mypurewater.com. And if they want a discount code and they want to support my channel, they can use the code Uprising144K.
What is it? Uprising144K?
Yeah. The 144K is a number from ancient scripture. The 12 tribes of 12,000 equals 144,000. That's why I chose the uprising, rising from amongst the dead. There's so many sick people and people dying these days, and hydrogen is the ascension molecule. I just thought it all fit, but
love it. I will absolutely link that.
and here's a lab report. I mean, this was a lab report in regards to the carbon distillation. And so, like I said, no water filter will remove all viruses, bacteria, parasites, and then on top of it all the other contaminants that are in water, and carbon distillation will do just that. So, and they're not that expensive. That's the good news. The ones I recommend are American made, higher quality. You could get something a little cheaper that's Chinese made. I've used them before. I don't like the way they work. I'd rather spend a few $100s more. So first, take the cleanest water. Now the thing I like about this machine is that you don't have to hook it up to your sink. I hate machines that you have to hook up to your sink and then use whatever filter they give you, which is usually a carbon filter and not very good. This device, you can put any water you want in it. So you pour the water in it, and then you run it. The Japanese made it so easy for us. One button. That's all it has is one button.
Okay.
So you push the button, and it begins to dissolve hydrogen gas into the water. And so once it's dissolved, it's a pitcher. You just pour it in. It's just like drinking water. It's so simple. But what it's doing to us on a cellular level is literally hard to believe. I mean, it's so hard to believe. And I actually believe, and I'm going to do more videos on this in the future, not to get into the spiritual aspect, but the way that it affects the pineal gland. The way that it affects the brain in general. This is why I think your friend who had that traumatic brain injury, who is now having issues with blood pressure, I do think it's brain related.
I think so, yeah.
Something is just off. And I think that hydrogen will make a massive difference. And I'd love to hear later on what ends up happening because there's been so many of these stories. I mean, I got so many stories of things that just shouldn't be possible. I mean, they just shouldn't be possible. Yeah. I had a doctor call me. He's an oncologist from Harvard, I believe. And he wanted me to teach him about hydrogen because you should see how hydrogen even works with things like cancer and even things like, even with chemotherapy that would kind of blow your mind. Watch video number 8. And we were specifically talking about T cells, something that doctors never tell you that, we have these T cells that help fight cancer, but when you use chemo, it destroys your T cells. And so, that's why people's tumors can sometimes go away. And when you're off the chemo, they just come back with a vengeance. It's almost like you have no force field anymore. And it appears that hydrogen actually protects the T cells while going through chemo. And so what I've seen is the results. There was a woman, I mean, not to bring too many examples here, but there was a woman who was given 3 months to live. She had breast cancer really bad. They told her it was completely incurable. And of course, I was able to get in contact with her. And I said, look, do this hydrogen protocol, use this equipment. She did. And they decided to go ahead and do chemo anyway because they have no other tools, at the hospital. And when they tell you that you need, let's say, these are just random numbers. Let's say they say, oh, you need 10 sessions. What I've noticed with hydrogen is within half of that amount, within 5 sessions, the cancer's already gone. And so you get half the exposure, and hydrogen appears to protect you from the chemo itself. So you can actually see that on video number 8. And this woman's cancer ended up going away, and it's been about 7 or 8 years now. She's still alive, and she was supposed to be gone in 3 months. So
amazing.
It's just been absolutely mind-boggling. There are just so many stories like this. So it's an exciting molecule.
Yeah.
And I actually believe this is going to be really wild. I don't know if I should say it. You can delete it if you want.
Okay.
But basically, after years of using hydrogen, I think it was around year 4 or 5 for me, I literally started feeling like it was communicating with me. And as crazy as that sounds,
no, it doesn't sound crazy.
and I can tell you why I believe it's doing it now. But hydrogen was the very first thing ever created. I mean, think about it. If ancient scripture says, let there be light, well, where does the light come from? It comes from the stars. What are the stars made of? Hydrogen and helium. By the way, helium is just the form of hydrogen.
2 hydrogens. Yeah.
Yep. And so somehow it was the very first thing. And I think that literally the Akashic records, or the records of literally all of creation, are in hydrogen, because there was another Japanese guy. See, the Japanese are just so amazing. You ever heard of this book?
Hidden Messages in Water by Emoto?
That's right, Masaru Emoto.
Yes. Are you... Sorry, keep going.
Yes,
yeah.
Please. So he obviously discovered that water appears to have memory.
Yeah.
I think he made one mistake. I don't think it's the water that has the memory. It's
really?
The hydrogen within the water that carries the memories of everything. And so as I've been consuming it, as I've been purifying my blood, I mean, I'm not even an engineer. I started getting the craziest things coming to me, like ways of using hydrogen that I would have never imagined. Like there's things that and I even know how to do it. Like I have the method already. I just need the funding. We're talking like millions of dollars. I mean, we're talking about changing the world in ways that people can't even begin to imagine. I literally, if anybody has any connections or just wants to write an email, write to Elon Musk, write to Joe Rogan, maybe even Billy Carson. I love Billy Carson, because there are things that I want to show the world. And forget the money thing. I mean, we're all going to die someday. You know, who cares about money, right? This is not about money. This is about doing something that is, in my opinion, potentially really good for mankind. And we're talking about so many ways that we can use hydrogen. This is why, have you ever heard of the Age of Aquarius?
Only in like a song.
Okay. Well, there's ancient scriptures talking about the Age of Aquarius. And by the way, we're literally entering the Age of Aquarius, and how it's going to bring upon a golden age. And like the golden age, you know, it's going to be so amazing. The Age of Aquarius to me is actually the knowledge of water and hydrogen. And we're going to truly learn how to use it. And there's so many things that people still don't know about hydrogen that have just been flooding to me through my pineal gland or my brain. I don't know exactly how it's happening, and I don't care how it's happening. The fact that it's happening is all that matters. And I think I want to share this information with important people who are going to use it for good, not to try to use it in negative ways, which I think some people would. But the things that I think we can do with hydrogen will blow your mind, even to the point of there's even equipment that I want to build that I believe will pretty much get rid of almost every medical condition known to man, which is a pretty bold statement. And again, I'm not making claims. The device doesn't even exist yet, okay, guys?
Okay.
But it would be very expensive to build, even to the point of potentially making the human body young again, which now we're getting some real serious stuff.
Yeah.
And the human body being able to live hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe even into the thousands. And so just total mind-boggling stuff. And so hydrogen, and the way that it can, I want to grow, there's ways that I believe it'll affect food. You should see this already. I already do some of it. So I don't know how much you know about this, and you would love to know this because you're probably into food and the diet.
Yep.
You can measure the antioxidative power of a carrot or an apple. You can actually measure that.
Okay.
And some really interesting studies they did were literally on comparing organic food versus non-organic food. They look the same. It actually appears, scientists discovered that organic food have quite a bit higher levels of antioxidants than non-organic food. So there is a difference, and that they appear to be more nutritious. So that's interesting. The Japanese discovered, and I saw the study, they literally would test an apple for its antioxidative power and then literally put the apple in hydrogen water and let it sit there for 20 minutes. And when they would measure it afterwards, off the charts. The antioxidant power of that apple became very enhanced. And so I
Amazing.
created something called the hydrogen smoothie. So I create these smoothies and I soak it in hydrogen water. And I've been doing this. And some of the stuff I've seen is just bonkers. Like people who have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout many years with doctors with issues they just can't solve. One of the ones that's a really big example is this poor girl who had gut issues like you wouldn't even imagine since she was little, constantly constipated, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I won't say too much of what was happening to her because it might gross some people out, but the poor girl had a lot of issues. And she did my protocol, totally solved her issues. And she was told, you're going to have to do surgery, you're a complete mess, your gut will never be right. And now she's fine.
That's amazing.
And so anyway, hydrogen is so exciting, and I believe it's going to change the world of energy, agriculture, health, anti-aging, easily diabetes.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
It's so exciting. And what you said about the water thing is really interesting to me because I learned about Emoto, and then do you know Veda Austin? Do you know the work of Veda? Yeah. And so she does a lot where she puts like a word or a photo or says something to water and then freezes it, and then it freezes sort of in the same shape as, whatever it was. Or so if there's a picture of a horse, there'll be a picture of a horse in the ice when she freezes this water. And it actually happened where a friend of mine went away for a couple of weeks, and she left a glass of water which had a lot of salt in it because we put minerals and salt in our water. So she put this sort of salty water and left this cup for several weeks, and when she came back she saw that the salt was in a particular shape, and she thought it was the plants because the plants were like the only thing in her apartment. But what we looked at, like I looked at this photo, and what we realized is that there was a print on the cup of these like leaves, and that was the exact shape of how the salt, solidified when she wasn't there. So it matched whatever it was on the container. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, like words that you put close to your body, because we're 99% water and all that. But you're saying it's the hydrogen. So the hydrogen is the intelligent piece of this.
Yeah, so this is
that's your hypothesis.
This is one of my protocols, which is, I think it's the hydrogen responding clearly within the water to the words, to the music, to everything else. And so one of the things that I do, and I believe that we can accelerate the process even of healing, and hydrogen has been shown to about triple the speed of healing, by the way. And so when you're doing something like hydrogen gas inhalation, when you're drinking hydrogen water, or even making it, like with the machine, I love this machine. I have so much respect for the guy who went through so much to make it. And so having these feelings and thoughts and whatever it is that you would choose
intentions,
to do, these intentions, I believe that they're actually enhanced when there's more hydrogen in the water. So the hydrogen gas is responding within the water, within the inhalation. So I actually think that you can actually enhance the properties of it.
I love that. I mean, you said that the hydrogen can go through glass and walls and things, and this is particle physics. This is like quantum physics that it can. It's the smallest. It's like the smallest thing. So it makes it's making sense. Yeah.
You're starting to see it. You're starting to see it, aren't you?
Yeah. And so if these particles are going outward,
they become our reality.
Yeah.
So you're
interesting.
You're going to closer to the core of the structure itself. So if you change it there, it's like changing the seed. You can't just change a tree, but you change the seed, then you'll have whatever tree it is that you're trying to, achieve.
Right.
And so hydrogen to me is the seed.
I love that.
Even Jesus made a really interesting comment about the mustard seed, and it's so tiny. I think he was actually talking about hydrogen, by the way, but totally wild. There's interesting scriptural verses that I've discovered that literally sound like they're talking about hydrogen. They just didn't have the word. And I have found quite a few, and it's just totally, like it said that it follows the intentions of the heart. Well, your intentions is what affect the way that the water ends up coming out. And it says that and I'm quoting the scripture, it says it's like a double-edged sword, meaning, and it says that it can penetrate anything. That's hydrogen. hydrogen can penetrate anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing it cannot penetrate. And so on and on it goes. It's so exciting, and I think that the future is going to be all about this hydrogen. And I've known it for quite a while, and I appreciate you letting me share it with everybody, because I do get really excited about it, and I just think that things like this are what really matters in the world, the things that are going to improve human life and hopefully improve our health, because I know myself from being sick that being sick is miserable, and if you can't walk, or if you're in so much pain, and I have so much compassion for people based on what I've been through and the things that I've seen people go through. And so anyway, I thank you very much for letting me share with your audience today.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of the research that you have done and your mission. It's very palpable, and I am super excited to get this episode out there into the world. And we'll link to your YouTube channel. It sounds super interesting. I'm excited to go watch more videos there. And is that the only way we can support you, Greg? Is there anything else?
Yeah, so let's see here. So YouTube is the main place where I put all my newest info out, but I am on Instagram.
Okay.
I am on Twitter. I'm either under Uprising144K, or you can look up Hydrogen Man. If people want to email me directly, I don't like doing that, but sometimes people just feel like that's the only way, or they really want.
You don't have to give out your email address. That is, we don't
it's okay.
need to.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Because sometimes people really need help, and I don't want to deny that to anybody. And my email is uprising144k@gmail.com.
Okay.
So, for people who, really, really want to consult, but I will say that I prefer for people to watch the videos. It gives me more time to continue to do my work. And that seems to be about the best ways that people can find me on Rumble too. I don't do a lot of stuff on Rumble though. YouTube is really the main place. And look, it's free to subscribe. So that's how people can help. You can help by subscribing. You can help by giving me a thumbs up on videos. You can help me by sharing me. If you know other podcasters or have other connections to like an Elon Musk, which I doubt anybody does, but
sorry, I don't have Elon in my contacts list.
Anything like this, I am very much willing to share this information, and I'm not going to withhold it. And I want people to be able to, especially people who with the funding, like an Elon Musk, who's also an engineer, that we can develop certain things for the greater good of mankind. So,
well, my hope is that you connect with people who will really help to spread your message in a positive way, and with the funding that is so important for it's necessary, and so we can definitely call that in. So thank you so much for being here, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me on. It was great. It was good fun talking to you.